Warwick Instruments, as the gentleman mentioned. A few years ago, I met the owner of the company. I had been going around, and around the time I turned 40, I decided I wanted to take a different path, and I wanted to get into education. I wanted to start to maybe really start sharing some of my experience. And I met the owner of Warwick, and we hit it off real quick, and a quick relationship formed. And I brought some ideas to him that would involve a grassroots marketing program that would be an ambassador, which would be me. And I would go around the world, and I would be the face of the company, and I would talk to people face to face and tell them exciting stuff about the company, tell them about what's different about the company. And at the same time, I would share my passion and my deep love of being a musician, and I would share some of my experience with players around the world to try and perhaps inspire them and give them maybe some tools that they could use on their own musical journey. And he was into it, and he got behind it. And since that time, I've done 160, 170 clinics with Warwick in 15 different countries. And this year I'm scheduled to go to 10 more countries and going all over the whole world doing this. And it's a real dream, and it's a real honor to do it. So here we are today. And it's a nice day, you know. We're alive. We woke up. That's always a good start. But on a rainy day, I like to play the blues a little bit. You know, for some reason, the rainy days make me feel like playing some blues. Not because blues is sad, because blues makes me happy. I don't, you know. Anyways, I'll play a little bit for you for a couple minutes, just improvise a little bit, and then you get an idea, a little bit where I'm coming from as a player. And then we'll start talking about the basses, and we'll talk a little bit about. I'll go back and tell you a little bit about my history and some of the things that I've done with music and some of the places I've gone and experiences. Thanks. The bass that I'm playing right now is called the thumb bass. Okay, this is the flagship. You know, this is the one that put Warwick on the map, kind of. You know, it's unlike anything else, and there's nothing like it, and it's like nothing else in terms of the way it looks, how it's constructed, the way that it sounds, and the way that it plays. It's crafted from African bubinga, and if you were to look at it, it looks like a little, kind of a little tiny little thing, but if you were to pick it up, it's very heavy because the African bubinga is a real dense wood. And it has a wenge neck, and a wenge fingerboard. And these Warwick basses have a real special character and personality to their tone that is the result of tonal synergy of the woods that are combined to make them. They tend to be really throaty. They have this cool low mid-range kind of throaty sound to them, which really translates well in terms of how it fits into the fabric of music and how it fits into a mix. So you can always hear a guy or lady who's playing a Warwick bass up on the stage. You can hear every note that they're playing because the woods themselves have this natural kind of low mid bump in there, you know, and this kind of little bit growly and a little bit throaty kind of tone to them. That's the best way to describe a Warwick bass, particularly a thumb bass. No other instrument really sounds like it. And another contributing factor to that is the pickup placement. You have this one has two J-style pickups on it, like a lot of bass guitars have two pickups on it, and you can fiddle around with the knobs and get a variety of tone shaping by adjusting between the two pickups. But the placement of these two pickups is an important factor because you have one that's kind of like right in the center, and then you have one that's way towards the back, but it's got this little angle to it, all right? What this is doing is putting the pickup, angling it back more towards the bridge on the low side, and the result is it's enhancing the punchiness, low punchiness of it. Oh, right on. So the thumb bass, it's called the thumb bass. It's a great bass for slapping. You know, the technique of slap bass that was invented in the 70s by Larry Graham, and then has been evolved by bass players for many decades now. Slap it. Good old time getting slap happy on one of these things, and it's got that special character of sound to it. I want to tell you a little bit about the wood that goes into making these basses, and there's a special process that they do there that blew my mind when I first went over to visit the factory in Markneukirch in Germany. The owner of the company, Hans-Peter Wilfer, my friend, he said, just check everything out. Just go crazy. Go down in there. I had been making videos, I had been making videos doing demos of instruments and things like that, and I'm a bass nut job, you know what I mean? So for me, it was like being a kid in a candy store. And he said, just go crazy. So they had a couple hundred instruments down in the custom shop showroom. And I just went down in there and just started pulling basses off the wall and taking them into this little sound cabin with my little video camera and saying, hey, what's happening? I'm here with this bass, and let's hear what it sounds like. And my first visit there, it's been 3.5 years. During that visit, I think I did 60 little demo videos and put them all up on the YouTube. And they've got like 2 million plays. And I put absolutely no planning into them whatsoever. They're all the first take, and I didn't even know that much about the brand, so I got a few things wrong. I've learned a lot since that time. But the main thing that I learned right away was that there's so much craftsmanship that goes into them. I'd never really experienced that high a level of craftsmanship that had gone into the basses that I had played. See, I played all the basses over the years. I played the Fender basses, the Rickenbacker, the Lakelands, the G&Ls, the Lembics. There's so many great basses out there, and they're all good for certain things, and they're all cool. But my thing was that I could never find a bass. I could never find one bass that did everything the way that I needed it to do. You see what I'm saying? I could find one that sounded good for an old school kind of a soulful sound, right? And maybe it would sound good for doing, maybe the harmonics were good on it or whatever. But when it came to slapping, I couldn't get a good slap sound out of it. So then I needed another bass for that. Or you know, so it would do like A, B, and C right, but it wouldn't do D right, you know what I mean? And that drove me nuts. I was always kind of searching for that one thing. Well, once I started playing these Warwick basses, when I went over there the first time, I was like, every single one of them, I can do all my, all the dialects within my musical language, all the places that I want to go, all the ways that I want to speak as a bass player and as a musician. I can get it off of any one of them. You know what I mean? And what I realized is it's the wood. So I went over to Hans Peter and I said, man, these basses are really amazing. You know, they really sound great, and they really have a great variety to the tones I can get out of them. And he said, yeah, well, we put a lot of care into the wood. And then I went on to check out the factory, you know, and I learned every process of the factory. Okay, first of all, the way that they source the wood is important. They get all the wood as logs, right? Still trees with bark on them, and they bring them all the way to Germany, okay? Then they cut them up into smaller pieces, and they stack them, staggered, on pallets in a gigantic warehouse 10 times as big as this building that we're in right now, stacked and twice as tall as this. And they sit out there for 3 to 5 years, naturally long-term air drying. So they're out there, outdoors, it's like a shed, and the air can get around them, and the wood dries for 3 to 5 years, minimum. And in some cases, 7 to 10. I was looking at one pile, and I was talking to the production manager, Marcus, and he said, that pile of cherry we've had it for like 25 years, 26 years. So the wood is dried for a long time prior to going into production. And this is a really important part of it. This is really important part of the beginning stages of having control over the quality of what you're making when it comes to instruments. And it comes from the old world style of making instruments. You see, this guy, Hans Peter Wilfer, he grew up in the Framus factory. Has anybody heard of Framus? It was a German brand that started in the 1950s by Hans Peter's dad. So as a little boy, he grew up in the Framus factory. And they used the old world ideals and methods of instrument making from the Czech violin makers and cello makers. And they in handcrafting, and they used the old world ideas. Well, Hans Peter took those old world ideas, and then he started Warwick in 1982, and he has evolved it to be equally driven by the old world ideals and crafting techniques, and married it with the most state-of-the-art technology that's available on the planet. Okay, so that's kind of what Warwick is all about. It's 50% this old world craftsmanship and 50% technology. So the wood is dried. We'll just start at the beginning again. The wood is dried naturally for an extended period of time, 3 to 5 years minimum. Then it's brought into the factory, and every single piece of wood is moisture tested, okay, using the special sensors to determine that it's at exactly 6% moisture within the wood. You see, wood is organic material, and it has cells in it which contain moisture. And it's kind of like a living, breathing thing. Even after you cut it, it's still in motion because of the cells that are in it and because of the moisture that's in those cells. So there's no way to have complete control over wood, but you can kind of get a handle on it by controlling how much moisture is in it, determining how much moisture is in that wood. So it goes across this sensor, and then it's determined if it has that 6% moisture content. If it's still too wet, it goes back out for more dry. If it's too dry, then it comes into the production facility where there's these misters that and the entire production factory is at exactly 6% humidity in the air at all times, the entire building. So you bring in a pallet of wood, you put it in there for 2 weeks, wood naturally takes on the moisture content of its surroundings, and it brings it up to the 6% that it needs to be, okay? Then it goes to the next criteria test, which is the beauty criteria test, and there's the wood specialists that sit there and they look to match the grain patterns and to make sure that it meets a certain criteria, a beauty criteria of the beautiful grains. Then it continues on, and there's the neck lamination stations. All Warwick instruments have laminated necks, okay? So when you take wood and you glue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces together, it's much, much stronger than one piece of wood, okay? And much less resistant to any kind of twisting or warping or anything like that. So this is giving long-term stability and strength and durability to the necks. Okay, so they're all laminated. Then the way the bodies are made is really cool too, because they have 2 CNC machines. Anybody know what a CNC machine is? It's a computerized cutting lathe. Okay, this part of the process is amazing because they have 2 CNC lathes that are on 5 axes. Okay, it's more common to have 3 axes. Okay, this is the head. This is like the thing with the bit on it that's doing the cutting. It can go on 5 axes, so it enables them to make all these complex carved body shapes with incredible tolerances of consistency. Okay, so when you have that consistency, this speeds up the process on the front side of preparing the body. Then they can spend more time on the handwork afterwards, the handwork, sanding and smoothing and the shaping of it. So they're able to have real consistency and real speed in getting the bodies to their first stage, and then they can spend time, and then equal amount of time is spent on the hand sanding. Now another thing that they do at the factory that's really cool is the lacquering process. I'm going to show you this other base because this is a really good example of it right here. This is a Streamer Stage 1 model. The lacquering process that's done is completely unique. Nobody else does it in the whole musical instrument industry. See, this is what we call a high polish finish. It's shining like a clear coat, like a clear glossy finish. And it really makes the wood grain underneath pop. You know, it really makes it pop. Well, this lacquering process is really interesting because it's water-based, okay? Traditionally, lacquer is like this gooey, toxic stuff that when you're spraying it, you put it on in multiple layers, then you have to dry it, and it's very toxic, and the people that spray it in the long term basically die young, you know what I mean? It's just horrible stuff to work with. Well, this is water-based, so it's non-toxic, okay, first of all, so you could drink it. You wouldn't want to drink it, but you could drink it and it wouldn't kill you, okay? It's very easy to be worked with and safe to be worked with, but that's only one of the many, many benefits of it. First of all, it goes on paper thin, paper thin, okay? Just spray it, and then it goes into this, it goes on a hook, and then it goes down this conveyor dealio, and then it goes into this big chamber that looks kind of like a spaceship sort of, or a capsule on the top of a spaceship, and it goes up in there, and then it gets hit with UV light for like 34 seconds, and then it comes back down, comes out of the chamber, and it's completely dry. Wow. It's completely dry. No, there's no curing. There's no hanging it for 3 weeks while the lacquer dries and then doing it again. It's done. Okay. They do it twice though. Actually, they spray it, wet sand it, and do it twice. And if you look at it, if you look at this actual coating that's on here under magnification, it's almost as clear as a diamond, okay? Now, if you looked at a traditional lacquer job through magnification, it's gray, fibrous, and milky, under magnification. So this is absolutely clear, and that's what makes them pop like that. The other thing that's amazing about it is completely scratch resistant. You can grind your keys all over and it won't scratch. It's incredibly hard, and you know, it's a safe material to use. It also goes on there nice and thin, so it doesn't choke out the instrument. You know what I'm saying? Less choking of the wood makes the wood happy. So that's completely unique. Another thing that Warwick does that nobody else does, that's completely unique, that you might not know, but I'm going to tell you, is the invisible fret technology. This is a cool process. When any musical instrument, or any fretted musical instrument, when the frets are installed, you cut these lines across the fingerboard, right? And then you have a fret, and it's pressed into that line, okay? Well, normally the line would be cut all the way across the entire fingerboard. We've devised an in-house process. It's a machine. It's like a robotic multi-station big machine that takes up maybe about twice as much room as this area that we're in right now. And it's all robotic arms that grab the necks and do several different steps to them. But ultimately what happens is the line isn't cut all the way across the fingerboard. So when the fret is pressed in, it leaves solid wood intact going all the way down each side of the fingerboard. The frets don't hang off the edge, okay? So you don't feel the frets, okay? So it's really comfortable in your hand. It makes for a real soft, comfortable left hand thing. And then also the wood, the continuous wood that continues up and down the fingerboard they act like rails, like rigid rails, where as if you were to cut the slots all the way through, it kind of compromises the integrity and the strength of the neck a little bit, right? Well, this holds it all together. It creates like these rails down the sides, which transfers vibration better, ties the whole ties the whole vibration together a little bit more, and contributes to the overall performance and tone of the instrument. So that's another thing that's done completely in-house. So I could tell you, when I was learning all this stuff, I was like, wow, this is really amazing. And to see it in person, to see it actively working and the way it all feeds off of each other is truly fascinating, because here's the real kicker. Look at my coffee.
This one.
There it is. Here's the real kicker. It's completely green. It's 100% self-sufficient factory that is its own power plant. It generates all the power that it uses in a completely carbon neutral production, where it has the largest display or solar panel array in eastern Germany, and it generates enough power from air turbines and from solar energy and from burning the scraps, the sawdust, all the sawdust from all the cutting and all the sanding is vacuumed through tubes at every station and goes into a silo, and then it's burned. So it generates energy these three different ways. And then using an in-house power plant, using geothermal heating, the hot air is forced down into the earth, way down into the ground, where it gets even more hot, and then it comes up, and then using a heat pump, that hot air energy is turned into air conditioning for cooling the buildings. And the whole thing is just completely self-sufficient, almost completely off the grid, and it will be shortly. Another thing that they do that nobody else is doing pretty much is that we're starting to use more and more FSC woods. That's good. FSC stands for Forest Stewardship Council. Okay, this is a chain of custody from seed to production of every log. Okay, millions of instruments are being made a year. Right? There's not enough trees to make millions of instruments. They can't grow fast enough, and in 30 years there won't be any more trees, so that we can play guitar, right? That's not cool, right? You need to plant more trees. Someone needs to regulate the fact that trees need to be planted. if you don't regulate it, people will just take. You know what I mean? It has to be regulated. So they have this program called the FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, and that also ensures the safety of the lumberjacks that are cutting them down, the safety of the workers that are harvesting them, and ensures the reforestation. Okay, so that's another thing that Warwick does that not many people are doing. Another big part that they're contributing to environmentally conscious manufacturing is the use of tiger stripe ebony as opposed to black ebony. You know, in guitars traditionally you would have black ebony on the fingerboard and this jet black ebony, and wow, it's beautiful, right? Well, about 14 years ago, Hans Peter was with his wood buyer and his supplier, and he was at the point of purchasing some ebony wood, and there was 3 or 4 ebony logs, black ebony logs over here, and the guy said, I want 10,000 euros for them. And then over here there was a mountain of like 60 logs, ebony logs, and but it wasn't pure black. It's kind of swirly, you know, it's got like color in it, it's got this white coloring that goes through it, and deemed inadequate for the musical instrument market because it's not pure black. And Hans Peter said to his wood buyer, what's the difference in terms of structurally? He said, there's no difference structurally, but this stuff's not black. People want black. He said, yeah, but that stuff's cool because it's marbleized and every log is different from each other. And he said, well, it's structurally it's the same, but the people are going to want the black stuff. And then he says to the guy, to the supplier, well, how much you want? You want 10,000 for those 4 logs? How much you want for those 60 logs? And the guy says, 3,000? He says, I'll take all of that, and from now on we're using that. And he just stopped. He said, I don't care if people want pure black. We're using tiger stripe ebony because it's a waste. They would just throw away 60 logs to get 4 logs, right?
Is that this stuff here?
No, that's Wenji. Oh, that's Wenji. I'm trying to see if we have one with ebony here. We don't. Not at the moment. We don't have one here. But what it is where it would normally be black, it'll have like a little white stripe down through it in some kind of random way, and everyone's different. And that really worked for Warwick anyways, because every instrument is a little bit different, you know? Every one is unique in its own way. When it comes to almost all of them, you notice are some sort of wood grain type of look to them. You know what I mean? There's a few that are in like a shiny black or a shiny red or whatever, but very few by comparison. The majority of them, you can see the wood grain and it's some sort of colored oil over the wood grain, you know? And that's kind of the way that you can visually see the quality of the wood that it's made from. You can actually see into the instrument, and for the player, you know, no tree grows exactly the same. So you get these cool grain patterns that naturally occur. And there's all kinds of other things that naturally occur in nature that are beautiful mistakes, like a tree that's been attacked by a disease or something like that, and the tree is slowly being killed by this disease, and it gets these swirls that go through it and stuff like that, or growth defects in the tree, or any number of things. You know, with maple, for example, you have subspecies of every species. You have flame maple, you have bird's eye maple, you have tear-step maple, you have quilted maple or curly maple, you have spalted maple. So you have subspecies for all these. And at Warwick, they have 65 different wood species that are ready, long-term dried, and at any point someone can order a custom shop instrument and choose from 65 different species of wood. And you know, the custom shop options, the possibilities in the custom shop is absolutely endless. If you want the instrument of your dreams and are ready to plunk down the money for it, Warwick can make you anything that you want. The motto is, if you can dream it, we can build it. So that's a little bit about the Warwick. That's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, and then if you imagine that all of this has been done by a family-owned company, you know, a guy, Hans-Peter Wilfer, and his wife. Hans-Peter's the boss. Florence, his wife, is the head of sales and export. Marcus Spangler is the head of production. Sven Clip-on is the vice president or the operations manager. We have a marketing department with 4 or 5 people in it. We have a sales department with 4 or 5 people in it. We have a couple executive secretaries who really run the show. They know more than anything. Peggy and Tortoise Glass, these 2 ladies that have been there around 20 years each. You can ask them anything, and they know the answer to it. It's a small company. It's a family-owned company. You know, it's not a big corporate thing. It's basically like a workshop, a very sophisticated workshop. Meaning, the amount of instruments that are turned out is not very big. Only 80 to 100 a month on a big month. It's not like we're turning out thousands and thousands of these things. There's a lot of time that goes into every single one. So maybe that will help you rationalize a little bit when you look at the price tags of a Warwick instrument. What specifically you're getting for that money. What level of quality and what level of investment and what level of consideration to the environment and what level of evolution and technology and investment goes into every one of the instruments. I mean, each of those 5-axis CNC machines is like $700,000 or $750,000. There's 2 of them. That's just one little element of what goes into what went into developing that factory. Anybody have any questions about Warwick instruments? Is anybody a Warwick player? Anybody? A couple people? You have one? Cool. Which one do you have?
I've got a 5-string rock bass.
Oh, right on. Here's another thing, you know, I just told you all about the super, you know, the Ferraris or whatever of the brand. Well, here's the thing. The company has established an incredible prestige around it because of the quality of the German instruments. And along the way, I mean, it's very obviously that not everybody can afford one of those. So we wanted to Hans-Peter wanted to make instruments that people could afford as well, right? And do some import instruments, some Asian import instruments. And the first wave that was of the rock bass series that was made, it was kind of like, let's do it. You know, this is his baby, and let's just do that to feed the need for that. And not a whole lot of care, not as much care went into it the first time around. Well, a few years ago, he said, you know what? I've changed my philosophy on the rock bass. I've absolutely changed my philosophy on the rock bass. If I'm going to do it, I need it to represent what Warwick is all about. So it needs to be the best. I want to be the best import at that price place. So what do we need to do to make our imports the best imports at that same price place that everybody else is doing? And they went in and they completely redesigned the rock basses. Completely. They started using all authentic German hardware on every single rock bass. They started using the laminated necks on every single rock bass. They beefed up the tolerances to make sure that the neck pockets were incredibly tight on all of them. Improved the electronics, started using better MEC electronics on them. Added the convenience features like the quick access truss rod cover and the quick access electronics compartment cover. Included strap locks. And they just brought and added the Warwick logo because at that point he decided it's not a rock bass by Warwick anymore. It's a Warwick bass that's made in China, and I'm proud of it. And now it has the Warwick logo on it. If you notice, the old rock basses said rock bass on it, and that's all. So, you like your rock bass? You're happy with it? Good. Here's probably why you're happy with it. Here's another thing that is a big part of redoing and restructuring the whole import process, the whole rock bass import process. We have several people from Warwick, Germany, that go to China at the point of production and are among the Chinese workers and the Chinese foremen and stuff like that in the factory as the instruments are being made at the point of production. You see, we don't own the factory in China. We do business with someone who owns a massive factory. In certain times of the year, our run is being done. And then when we're finished, another company comes in and uses the same factory. So the manufacturer doesn't own the production in China. That's part of why the price is less. Because if we owned a factory in China, it would cost billions, okay? So that's the first part of it. Now, so what we do is we send our people over there, our techs over there, And at the point of production, the bass goes do 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 do, and the last Chinese guy or lady to have it hands it to one of the German technicians, one of the setup people, and then one of our people has a criteria with 45 different inspection kind of check mark thing. And they have to go through every single instrument, and they have to check this and check that and do this and set it up and make sure that the frets are smooth, make sure that they're level. They have to put they have to set it up for the action and for the intonation. They have to double check every nut and screw and bolt to make sure that it's torqued exactly to the proper tightness and everything like that. This is stuff that nobody else does in this price place, period. And then they have to sign their name on it, right? And the date. And if that bass goes out into the world, and 3.5 months later, Hans Peter gets an email that says, such and such a bass serial number, blah, 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 is all screwed up, then he looks up who inspected it and calls them up and gives them a nasty gram. He says, how did this happen? Why am I paying good money for this? This is quality control. This is expensive front side prevention, quality control, as opposed to backside damage control, operating with 13, 14, 18, 26% failure of your instruments and just waiting for the problems to happen and then dealing with them later. That's what most people do. You know what I mean? They produce 1,000 instruments expecting that 100 of them are going to go wrong one way or the other. And then they're rolling the dice and gambling that 50% of those 100 that go wrong, the people won't, they'll just put it in the corner and they won't come in and complain about it. You know, they're just rolling the dice on that kind of a thing. Warwick does it completely different. Invest on the front side. You know, you guys that are selling the basses, I think that you probably don't have that many returns, if any at all, and when you know they're few and far between. So that's the front side investment on Asian manufacturing that Warwick does. That's different. Yeah? Go ahead.
With the way the frets are made at the factory with the railings and stuff, does that mean my local guitar tech can't deal with the frets?
Oh no! Once they're in, you can replace them. You can pull them, put them back in if you want to. But they're made out of bell bronze. They're going to last forever. They hold their crown for a long, long time, and they, you know what I mean? Hold the crown. You mean like your guitar tech or your guitar guy if he needs to?
I'm on a basis, so I have to change my frets every 6 or 7 years, I suppose.
Yeah.
So would the bass be the same way?
I have a couple, 3 or 4 Warwicks in my collection from 1991 that still have the original frets in them. It just depends. Like I said, this bell bronze that they're made out of is real hard, and it holds its crown for a long time. It doesn't mash out. I don't know anybody that's had to replace them. But it's not to say that some people have gorilla hands and they can mash them out, you know. But to pull them, you just pull them the same way and put them back in the same way. If a guy knows how to do it, he knows how to do it. It doesn't change that. It doesn't change the ability to refret it later on down the line. In fact, it makes it neater and cleaner because you don't rip the end out of it. You don't rip the corners out of it, you know, and leaving big gaps and chunks missing that you have to fill and try and you know recolor to make it look like it hadn't been tore up. You know, there's an art to pulling frets out carefully, without taking the whole fingerboard with it and the edges and everything like that. But they know how to do it. They heat them up, you know, and then they get a hold of it and they give it a kind of a gentle yank, kind of like pulling a Band-Aid off. I think, you know, like get it to right where it's ready to go and then just rip her out. Cool. Any other questions? How about some questions about playing or something? How many bass players we got here? Let's switch back over to talking about music. When I was a teenager, I started. I'll give you some history. From 12 to 18, I was into hard rock and heavy metal music. I was into UFO and Iron Maiden and AC/DC and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and The Who and all that kind of stuff. And from 82 to 87 or 88, then my mom took me to see Stanley Clarke at the advice of my 10th grade English teacher when I was 15 or maybe 16, and that and that night I was blown away by him and the way that I saw him playing. It just blew my mind. I'd never seen anybody playing like that. You know, he was playing leads and slapping the bass, and he was playing a special brand of fusion music that was funky and exciting and instrumental. And I was fascinated by it. That night, at the end of the night, he said, "Is there any bass players in the audience that would like to come up and sit in with me?" And I said, "Me. I said, "Okay, obviously you, young man, you want to. Come on up." So a little kid, I went up there, young guy, you know, went up there, played with Stanley Clarke. And the next day, it was a shockwave of inspiration that sent me in a whole new direction. I started trying to figure out, what is this funk, and where did it come from, and who invented it, what is it? And that led me to soul music, and I started getting into James Jamerson and Stax recordings, and at the same time I started getting into Louis Johnson and Larry Graham and Bootsy Collins and James Brown, and you know, all basically, you know, Black American soul music of all forms. I started diving headfirst into and falling madly, passionately in love with. And it changed my direction. I started listening to the fusion era bass players like Jaco Pastorius and Percy Jones and Alphonso Johnson and Jonas Elborg. And, you know, I never had, see, here's the thing about being a musician. Sometimes, you ever seen a cart horse in the street? You know, they got these blinders on, right? And they're forced to wear these blinders to prevent them from being spooked, and to just kind of give them, they have a row to hoe, and they're kind of steered through life, and they just kind of see what's directly in front of them, and they're beasts of burden, and they just kind of put their head down and plow through life with like a willing acceptance of what's going on. Well, you know, I think musicians sometimes put blinders on themselves. You see what I'm saying? And it prevents them from seeing the panoramic view of what music has to offer. You know what I'm saying? There's a very vivid landscape if we can keep our eyes and ears open, willing to try different things and to experience different things and to check out different styles of music. There's so many rewards and so many cool things that can come from it. And that's certainly been my story, because I started playing the hard rock and the metal and all that, then I got into funk and soul and blues, and I always had an appreciation for different types of styles, so therefore I was always willing to take any kind of gig that I could get, and I always just wanted to be part of it. And because I wanted to be part of it, people wanted me around, because I had the right kind of attitude. And I had a lot of great mentors as a young guy, and they took me under their wing, and they said, "Do this, don't do that, psh, psh, psh. Do this, don't do that," psh, psh, psh. And they whipped me into shape. And they used some really great tactics to put good musicianship skills, good disciplined musicianship skills into me at a young age, and to help me to appreciate music other than just the music of my generation. You know what I mean? When I was a teenager, I was into the music. There was my music that was going on right then, the 80s. But those guys started making me realize that you need to appreciate the stuff that came before it, because what you're into now came from somewhere. You know what I mean? And that came from somewhere. And that came from somewhere. And they hit me to the idea of having respect for all the different styles and going back to where they came from, and really putting a focus on the characteristics of style of each and playing them right. You know what I mean? Playing them how it's supposed to be played. If I'm playing a 60s tune, make it sound like I'm in the 60s. You know what I'm saying? Make the tone right, make the feel right, and make the part right. Don't try and reinvent it to be, you know, a modern slap bass trilogy or something like that. You know what I mean? Just do what it calls for, and understand how to do that, right? Well, these traditions, when we learn all these traditions, it arms us with a wealth of knowledge that I was able to take into the recording industry, and it made me a good session musician, because I could go in the studio and the producer could say, "Hey, we're looking for this thing. It's like a midnight train to Georgia kind of thing." You know what I mean? You know, like Bob Babbitt. You know, like kind of soulful, like melodic, but grooving. You know, and I say, "Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I love that tune, and I know who Bob Babbitt is, and I know that bass line, and I can give you that." Or he might say, we're looking for like a Tomorrow Never Knows, like a psychedelic trance thing, you know, like a Beatles psychedelic thing. Yeah, I know what you mean. Or we're gonna do a 2-beat train groove, you know. Or it's gonna be a rumba, you know, we're going for that Latin New Orleans thing. Or it's going to be a doo-waka. Doo-waka? Doo-waka, 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 doo-waka. You know, all those old groups from the 50s are the coolest ones anyways. The Stroll. You know, back in those days, each song had its own dance to it, right? Kids didn't go to concerts, they went to dances, and they went there and they danced, and then the bands played the music that they would dance to, and the bands would write songs that had a special dance, you know, let's do the twist, right? Okay, there's 100 of them, and that, you know, there's grooves that go along with them, and Ike Willis was the king of the stroll, the slow dance, and that's the one the kids always look forward to, because, you know, right? Okay, so all these different grooves and all this different understanding of this old style music. I would take any gig I could get. You know, I took some gigs with some older guys, and at the time I'm thinking, this is corny, you know, blue leisure suits to tuxedos, you know, we're playing 50s oldies, you know, and I'm like 20, you know, and they're like all old guys and everything like that. But I got paid, and those guys taught me a lot about what it really means to be a professional musician. We were playing at VFWs and old folks' homes and bowling alleys and museums and you know, all kinds of places like that. You know, it wasn't like, you know, like playing in Motley Crue or anything like that. You know what I mean? But it was working. I was making money and I was learning. And at the time, I just wanted to be on the road and I wanted to be involved. And when I look back on it, I go, God, I'm so fortunate that those guys took me along and let me do those gigs with them. Same thing goes with country music, you know, rhythm and blues, particularly blues and country. Here's the thing about blues and country. Never look down your nose at blues or country. It gets this kind of like thing like, oh, you know, it's so easy. You know, it's so easy. Oh, really? Is it that easy? Is it that easy? No, it's not. It's actually very sophisticated because it takes an incredible level of sophistication to execute that much discipline, okay? Because every human being is wired to be excessive. You know what I'm saying? So we always have to resist the temptation. We always have to resist all temptation. That's what our life is all about. Should I eat that last French fry? Yeah, I'm gonna eat that last French fry. You know what I mean? Do I really need some ice cream? No, but I want some ice cream. Should I really play this slap bass lick, or should I just play it how it's supposed to be? You know, I have to resist the temptation. And in music, that's one of the key elements of being a master musician, is to be able to embrace simplicity, embrace discipline. The true masters are actually not so much that they're master players, they're master listeners, okay? The more that we can develop our ability to listen and identify what's going on in music, the more of a master of music we are. Because then, if we can hear and identify, then we know how to contribute to the fabric. You see, my shirt is fabric. It's woven together. I can yank on it as hard as I want and it won't rip, right? Because there's many threads that are woven together tightly and they make it strong. It's the same thing with music. Music is many small threads that are woven together, you see? So we all, as bass players, it doesn't matter. I'm talking to all musicians right now. We're all part of that fabric, and we have to be able to blend in and play our role to make that fabric stronger. It's all about synergy. You know, the idea of synergy, the parts coming together and becoming a greater, stronger whole. That's what musicianship is. It's the fine art of collaboration. Everything that we do is a collaboration. And in collaboration requires compromise. You have to be willing to compromise. And you also have to be able to find ways with interpersonal skills to get your ideas across and to bring your ideas to the table. and to creatively bring your personality, your persona, and your musical style into the collaboration. We have to find ways to use the musical language that are polite. You see, there's etiquette in being a musician. You can't. If I'm having a conversation with you, I would talk, and then you hopefully would listen, and then you would talk, and then I would listen, and I would be listening to you to understand what you're saying, not just listening to you waiting for my turn to talk, but I would be listening, trying to understand what you're saying, and then I would respond. Right? That's how you have a conversation. That's how you have a respectful, a polite conversation. You don't just blurt out and interrupt somebody, right? That's rude. Same thing on the bandstand. You know, so many times I had to experience this for myself. You know, I was full of piss and vinegar as a young player, and I had something that I wanted to say, right? And you know, sometimes it would be like, you know, I want to say it now. I want to say it now. And it's kind of like a kid having a temper tantrum. A young child, a baby, a 3-year-old. I want it now, I want it now. You know, I know musicians like that to this day that have been playing for 30 years, you know. I want to play my solo now. It's like, man, it's not your turn. Wait your turn. You know, don't be a jive turkey. People like that they don't last. They don't fit in because it's a team sport, right? You have to be respectful on the stage, off the stage. You have to listen, you have to react, and you have to be respectful. There's etiquette involved in it. There absolutely is. I know that all you musicians know that guy, that annoying guy that wants to butt in all the time, or doesn't want to wait his turn, or wants to be a little bit louder, you know, than everybody else, who doesn't want to blend into the dynamics and the fabric. You know what I mean? Those guys need a good slap upside the head. But here's the thing, not a slap upside the head. The thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do is take care of our side of the street. Keep our side of the street clean. Meaning, lead by example. Don't let them steer you down the garden path. Meaning, if they're getting loud, they're acting a fool, they're being a nuisance, don't let them take you there. Don't go there with them. You know what I mean? Don't just be the example. You know? That's the best thing that we can do, is just be the example.
You get the gigs then too.
And then you get the gigs. And when you get the gigs, you get the rewards. And, you know, money might be part of that, but it sure as heck isn't, you know, all of it. I don't have going back to, I'll say one more thing about the music. Here's the thing. Every single style, to me, art is art. Art is supreme, okay? So every single style has equal validity in my mind in terms of sophistication. Every style has its own sophistication. I don't hold one in higher regard than the other, okay? I think of classical music as a fantastic, gorgeous art form that requires a ton of devotion to learn how to learn the traditions and characteristics of that style and be able to execute it well. Same thing goes for jazz improvisation. Same thing goes for playing bass in the Sex Pistols. You see what I'm saying? You have to have a certain attitude to play bass in the Sex Pistols. And you can't fake that attitude. You have to live it. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing for a blues musician, a real legit Chicago blues musician, the real deal. There's a level of sophistication to every single element of what goes into being that type of musician. Therefore, every single art form that I just mentioned is equally valid. Right? The only thing that matters to as artists in any kind of art is that we create simply for the art itself. We shouldn't create art with the prospect of recognition for it. We should create art simply to feed the muse, to feed our own inspiration, okay? And therefore, every form of art is valid to its creator. You don't need to prove that your art is valid or not. The only person it's there for is to serve as yourself, and then, in the event that people find favor in your art, rejoice. That's great. If they don't get hung up on it. You know what I mean? Here's the thing. Fear is the #1 disruptor, paralyzer, preventer. As soon as we enter into a mindset of, oh my God, what do they think? Do they like me? Do they don't like me? Do they, you know? As soon as we enter into that thing, we're paralyzing ourselves with negativity. You know what I'm saying? So just stay out of the realm of controversy. Stay out of the realm of competition. It's not a competition. It's not a race. There's no finish line. It's an individual journey that you dictate the pace at which you walk the path. No one else dictates the pace at which you choose to walk your path on your musical journey. Absolutely not. It's your thing. Do it your way, you know? Learn at the pace that you want to learn. Create at the pace that you want to create. I encourage people to always raise their personal bar of accomplishment. Meaning, if you're here and you want to, you always try and just raise it a little bit. Always challenge yourself a little bit. And just raise that bar, you know, like a track and field person. You know, they don't start out being able to vault 13 feet. They start out down here, and then they raise the bar a little bit. Just always trying to get better, faster, stronger, more knowledgeable, better ears, better instincts, more endurance, more physically in shape, more, you know, spiritually and emotionally fit. You know what I mean? Just raising your own personal bar to be the best that you can be. And have fun, you see? Music is supposed to be fun. Here's the thing, here's the other thing. When it comes to, these are all just my concepts. When it comes to music, I think that there's only one real superior purpose, and that's healing. It's medicine. Since the dawn of time, or since the dawn of humanity, you had the king, and then sitting next to the king was the musician. And the musician taught the culture, the people of the culture, the history of how to live, you see, through the music. If the crops were good and the corn was growing, you would rejoice, right? You would celebrate with music and with dance. If someone died or you didn't have any water and there was a drought or there was disease or there was famine, whatever, you would endure. You would use the music to endure those tough times. This is powerful spiritual healing medicine. Therefore, every single one of us is a medicine man or a medicine woman, a healer. For whatever reason, we don't know. Did it come from God? Did it come from the universe? Did it come from that Honda place over there? Who knows? But we were somehow, the gift of music somehow came into us. And some people play the radio. Some people play a musical instrument. You know what I'm saying? We don't know why. It doesn't matter. But the fact is, it's a gift to be able to have some sort of inspiration put into us. And this healing that we're capable of doing, sometimes that takes it to an even cooler level, is that we don't even know when we're doing the healing sometimes. Meaning, I might be here right now, there's 50, 60 people here. There might be one person in this audience who's going through something that is heavy in some kind of a way. You know what I mean? They got up this morning with a heavy heart, troubled mind, something like that. Maybe what they hear today will lift them. You know what I'm saying? Will help them get through. You know, through music, they will endure. And maybe, I don't know, because I don't know, maybe I will have accomplished some sort of healing, and then I'll leave and I'll go, and I'll finish my coffee and go on my way, and I don't even know I healed anybody. That's what's cool about it. It's mysterious. You see, we don't know when it's taken hold or not. We just go out here and do our thing and smile and try and make people happy and have fun. Don't get caught up in the whole competitive side of it. All that will do is prevent you from having the best possible journey you can in music if you get hung up on the competition. There's no better than, there's no less than. All right? Do we agree? That's just how I look at it. You know, have a good time with it. Have fun. How about any more questions about any of that? Or anything? Go ahead.
Here's a question about tone. Notice you're bearing your tone and sound a lot with technique.
Tone.
Yeah. Is that one of your key things rather than switching instruments or using preamps?
Yes. I have a good way to address that question. He's saying, you use a lot of techniques and different tones and at the beginning I said, my voice, my personality as a player I have a lot of dialects within my language. And I can tell you that 99% comes from me. I'm a musician, and the sound comes from me. It comes from my hands, and it comes from my mind, and it comes from my heart, and my body creates it. And then the instrument is a vessel that delivers it, you see? So the instrument is most of it, it comes from the musician, you see? And I'm able to use a lot of those different dialects in my musical vocabulary, my musical language, by the way that the techniques that I've developed with my hands. Simply with the right hand alone as a bass player, I can give you 10 right now, rapid fire. You can play at the end of the fingerboard with your fingers. You can play over the center of the pickup with your fingers. You can play on the back pickup. And each one of those, it has a different... Drums? We're talking bass. So it's one boom, boom, boom up here. It gets a little bit more defined in the middle, a little more focused, and then the back punchy, right? Another one that you can do is you can play with the palm mute. I do this all the time. Right. And then another one is to slap it. Another one is to double thumb it. Another one is to play with a pick. There's so many different ones. There's so many different sounds and stuff that I can make happen with my right hand. Okay? And it's just all in those different techniques. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah. Just a young bass player I worked with. First time he sort of rolled up for a bit of a session, came in a flight case with about 18 effect pedals in there. Had one technique. So trying to convince him to explore more about, the acoustic sound of the instrument and what he can get out of it with his hands rather than relying on the electronics.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with this. I use effects, but mostly for the creative process because they, when I'm playing solo bass concerts, my esoterica solo bass concert, I'll use some reverb and some delay to give it this ambience and kind of a cool spooky vibe or whatever. But if I'm playing meat and potatoes on a blues gig, I don't bring any pedals, And yeah, you're right to tell him that he should diversify with his tone. But here's the thing. You have to be careful with the way that what we tell people they ought to do and they ought not to do. Because here's my philosophy, another one of my harebrained philosophies. Okay, art, academic study and tradition is what it is, right? You know what I mean? There's traditions, and you ought to do it this way because that's the way everybody else did it. And when it comes to academic learning, there's rules. I hate to call it rules, but there's traditions of learning music theory and things like that. And I say you should learn them. You should be involved in academic study. You should learn to read music. You should learn to understand the traditions of academic study of music. And then once you've learned them and you have a good understanding of them, you should proceed to break every single rule, okay? You should rage against the machine, you should rock the boat, and you should abashedly go wherever you damn well please with your music and break all rules of convention, you see? Because evolution requires inventors. It requires innovators. The people that are remembered are the people that rage against the machine, who do something different than what everybody else did. So, if a kid wants to mess around with effects pedals, I hate to say don't do it, because maybe they'll create something magnificent and extraordinary with that. You know what I mean? But it's our job as the mentors to steer them in a good direction. So I think that you're doing a good job by saying, hey, why don't you try and get some good fundamental technique tones coming out of your instrument, and maybe just have a couple pedals instead of 10 or something. I don't know. You know what I mean, though?
Yeah, I ended up buying 2 of the pedals he had anyway, just for. So it works both ways.
It's fun. Pedals are fun. It's kind of like having a easel or whatever they call that with the painter with the colors on it. You know what I mean? And you can kind of fancy up something that sounds like the practicing process. You can take it from kind of a dull routine and make it. You can spice it up by putting a little something on there. You know what I mean? like working through scales and arpeggios and exercises and things like that, it might sound kind of like very routine and dull. But if you put a little phaser, a little envelope foul around there or something, or a flanger or whatever, it starts to kind of sound kind of cool. I gotta wrap it up. I'm like greased lightning today. I gotta be on a plane in an hour. But I thank you so much for coming. I hope you had a good time. Everybody have a good time. I got about. Thank you. I'll play a little bit more. I'll do one of the tunes from my my album. And by the way, if you want to, please buy my album from me for $10. It's called She